This is a video on how to create a number line that includes fractions and decimals. We're going to look at those two skills separately. So we're going to look at just fractions for this first one. They are asking in this one to plot the points on a number line, -1, 2.5, -3/4, and 1 1/3. We have to create the number line scale ourselves. So to help us create that scale, I want to think of what is my smallest number here and what's my biggest number. In this case, I know my smallest, because I have negatives, is going to be one of these two, either -1 or -3/4. I know that 1 in positives is typically further from 0, telling me that this is going to be my smaller of the two numbers because it's going to be further away from 0 in the negatives. My biggest number is either going to be 2.5 or 1 1/3. I know 2 is bigger than 1, so I know that's my largest number here. To ensure that I get all of these numbers on my number line, I'm actually going to use a scale of 1, and I'm going to work from -2 all the way to +3. So here's my scale. I can place 0 wherever I want. I'm going to make mine a little bit further to the left so I have more room. I'm actually only going to do -1 on this side. I don't need to include the -2. I have 1, 2, 3. Notice I didn't use a ruler, didn't use any tool. I kind of eyeballed. They're not perfectly spaced evenly, and that's okay. This is just a quick sketch of where these different things are. So on this number line, I'm going to plot my points with a blue pen, starting with -1. I can quickly find that one. I know that one's right here. I'm going to mark that off my list. I have -1 plotted. The next one I want to plot is 2 1/2. The fraction makes it a little bit trickier. So I'm looking, I know that it has to be at 2, and then it's a little bit more than 2. It's exactly halfway between 2 and 3. So I'm going to split this segment between 2 and 3. So this is where I should plot the point of 2 1/2. Got that one off my list. I'm done. The next one I'm looking at is -3/4. So I know that +3/4 is between 0 and 1 on the number line, so -3/4 should be between 0 and -1. Now this is where it gets a little bit more challenging. I actually want to split my chunk right here into 4 pieces because I have fourths as my denominator. So I'm going to split this as best I can into 4 pieces. Notice I only drew 3 lines, but between those I have 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces created. I want to plot this on -3/4. So I started at 0, count -1/4, -2/4, -3/4. That would be this spot right here for -3/4. My last number I have to plot is 1 1/3. So rather than splitting it into 2 pieces or 4 pieces, because my denominator is thirds, I'm going to find 1 and say I know I have to go past 1 because it's 1 1/3. So I'm going to split this into 3 equal sections. I'm saying 1 1/3 would be the first mark after that, right here. So the key to plotting fractions is to breaking the sections in between into however many parts we need, either 2 parts, 3, or 4, or more if necessary. Now let's look at it with decimals. In this case, I want to think, what scale do I need again? So what's my smallest number? What's my biggest number? All right. In this, I have -1.75 and -9/10. I know that this is further from 0, so that's going to be my smallest number, -1 75/100. Now I'm looking at either 0 3/10 or 2.5? Well, my biggest number is 2.5. So again, I'm probably going to plot -2 this time, all the way to 3. So if my zero's here, I have -1, -2. Now I'm going to move to my positive side, +1, +2, and +3. I have my number line created. The next job is to plot the points. So again, I used a scale of 1 because I'm increasing by 1 each time or decreasing by 1 each time. That's the change. So I'm going to look right here. And my thought process for this, I like to think of this as a positive number. So if I know it's +1 75/100, that's going to be closer to 2 than it is to 1. So I know when I plot it in the negative side, it should be closer to -2 than -1. And another thing I know about 1 75/100 in the positive, it's actually really between 1 1/2 and 2. So I'm going to find, well, 1 1/2 would be, -1 1/2 would be right here. So roughly here would be -1 75/100. Right where I put there, because I'd say that's about half. This is in between -1 1/2 and -2. The next one I have to plot is 0.3 or 3/10. I know that 3/10 is less than 5/10, which is halfway between. So now I'm going to be between 0 and probably 5/10 right here. So if I estimated 0.3 would be where that dot is. I'm using some numbers I know to help me find the rest. Next is 2.5. I find 1, 2, and now I'm going to go halfway, or 2.5, 2 5/10. Halfway between 2 and 3. The last one I have to point is -0 9/10. If I had that as a positive, I know 0.9 or 0 9/10 would be closer to 1. So when I plot this on the negative side, this point should be closer to 1. And it's probably going to be one of my closest points, so I'm going to plot it right about here. It's helpful to think where would the positive number be before I plot my negative numbers for decimals, because I can think of it as a mirror, and if it's closest to 1 here, it'll be closest to -1 on the other side. And that is how you include fractions and decimals on a number line.